I was betrayed by my brother and ignored by my family. But what happened next changed everything. I woke up that morning with a strange weight on my chest, a mixture of fear, exhaustion, and anger that I couldn't quite pinpoint. My name is Eduardo. I'm 32 years old, and at that moment I felt like my entire life had crumbled in a single instant. I looked at my phone and saw a message from my mother, Helena, reminding me that I had to attend my ex-fiancée, Bianca's wedding to my own brother. Raphael, my stomach churned. How could anyone feel so much humiliation in a single day? I was tired of feeling isolated within my own family, surrounded by people who judged success by money and status, and who couldn't see my pain. I felt shame, of course, but also a deep anger, mixed with that feeling of helplessness that eats away at you from within. Everything felt wrong, but there was a bitter clarity. I had to do something, and I couldn't just sit around complaining anymore. I arrived at the wedding feeling heavy in body and even heavier in mind. Every fake smile, every forced hug reminded me that none of this was mine. Bianca was there, radiant, as if nothing had happened. Raphael, smiling with that confidence that always irritated me, seemed to own the world. And my mother, happy, gave me disapproving looks as if I were the outsider. It was unbearable. Every step I took in that hall felt like a direct blow to my pride. I tried to take a deep breath, but the air felt too heavy. I felt small, invisible, betrayed in every way. But amidst all that pain, I began to realize something. If I continued to allow myself to be crushed, I would have no chance of turning the page. Something inside me ignited, a desire to prove to myself that I wasn't finished, that I still had the strength to fight. On the way home, I couldn't stop thinking about everything. In the car, alone, my mind began to work in a way I had never allowed before. I'd always been an analyst, a forensic accountant, someone who deals with numbers and hidden truths. And suddenly I realized that this skill could be my weapon. Raphael and Bianca had done everything to appear perfect on the surface, but there are always cracks in the facade when it comes to money and business. That thought gave me a strange sense of control, something I hadn't felt in a long time. Anger began to transform into focus. For the first time, I thought, I'm not going to be a victim anymore. I'm going to find the truth and show it to everyone. And that clarity, even mixed with pain and exhaustion, was the spark that would change everything from then on. I spent the day replaying every detail, every conversation, every slip-up Raphael and Bianca had made. I began mentally gathering information, suspicions, everything that could be used to expose their true colors. At the same time, I felt a mixture of guilt and fear. Fear of making a mistake, of getting too entangled, of suffering even more. But there was also something I hadn't felt in years, hope. Hope that I could transform all that betrayal into something that would strengthen me, that would restore my worth. It was strange to feel hope alongside so much pain, but it was real. I needed to believe I could do something right, that all was not lost. And it was in that moment that I realized this wasn't just about revenge, it was about justice, about clearing my own name and regaining my pride. Late that afternoon, after long hours of sitting silently in my apartment, I realized I needed to act immediately. I grabbed my computer and began reviewing old documents, contracts, and financial records. Every detail I remembered about Raphael's business dealings gave me a sense of controllable power, and for the first time I felt like anger could be used productively. I felt less powerless. I began writing a mental plan for how I could gather evidence, how I could protect my own integrity while exposing the fraud. It was both terrifying and exhilarating. For the first time since the wedding day, I felt there was a way out, that I could transform this pain into something concrete. That day wasn't just about humiliation, it was about realizing I had the strength to turn things around. That night, after I turned off the computer, I felt a mixture of physical and mental exhaustion that felt like it would break me, but wouldn't let me sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Bianca's smile at the altar, Raphael's arrogant posture, my mother's disapproving expression. It was suffocating, but at the same time, something inside me was awakened. I knew I needed to transform that pain into action. I needed to regain some control over my life. I spent hours mentally organizing every step, every possible path I could take to expose the wrongdoing, but without letting myself be consumed by hatred. It was a delicate but necessary balance. I felt fear of exposing myself, of making a mistake, of doing something that could harm me, but I also felt a clarity I had never felt before. For the first time, I understood that my experience, my knowledge, could be my strength in a moment that seemed hopeless. The next day, I began reviewing every financial document I could find about Raphael and Bianca's business dealings. It was meticulous, exhausting, but somehow it made me feel alive again. With each number, each suspicious transaction that surfaced, I felt a pang of anger, but also a rising sense of justice. It was strange to realize that the same rage that consumed me could transform into something concrete and powerful. For the first time, I didn't feel powerless in the face of betrayal. I was using my skill, something that had always defined me, to create a path that could change everything. The sense of clarity grew, along with the determination to not allow those who humiliated me to continue unpunished. It was painful, but also liberating. In the midst of that analysis, I realized how alone I had felt throughout my family life. My parents had always favored Raphael, always thought he was the perfect son, while I was constantly criticized, isolated, and devalued. And yet, for years, I tried to please everyone, tried to fit into expectations that weren't mine. Now, seeing the full extent of their actions, I felt a mixture of sadness and relief. Sadness for everything I'd been through and the burden I'd carried, but relief at finally seeing that I could use my own strength and intelligence to bounce back. For the first time, I felt that my pain had a purpose, that it could be transformed into something positive and concrete. While I was working, Gustavo, my friend and confidant, called me. He always had an outside perspective on my situation and, in a way, helped me ground myself. Talking to him was like opening a pressure valve. I said everything: anger, shame, fear, pain. He listened without judgment and offered me perspectives I hadn't considered, simply sharing my experience with someone who understood my suffering made me feel lighter, more confident that I wasn't alone. It was an invisible but real support. I began to realize that even in the darkest moments, small connections could give me the strength to keep fighting. Feeling that someone believed in me was a silent but essential turning point. Late in the afternoon, after hours of intense work, I finally managed to gather concrete evidence that could reveal Raphael and Bianca's wrongdoing. The exhaustion was physical, but the feeling of internal victory was overwhelming. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't just reacting to the pain, but creating an action capable of changing my reality. The fear was still there, of course, but now it was accompanied by something I hadn't felt in a long time: hope and determination. It was strange to feel that the same pain that crushed me could drive me to build something solid. It was at that moment that I realized that this familiar humiliation could be the catalyst for my own overcoming, for reclaiming my pride and my life independently, without relying on anyone's approval. The next morning, my body felt heavy, almost as if all the anger and anxiety of the last week had transformed into physical pain. But strangely, there was also a sense of purpose I'd never felt before. Sitting at the kitchen table, staring at papers and spreadsheets, I realized that all my experience as an accounting analyst could be used for something bigger than just numbers. It could be my way of reclaiming my worth and protecting myself from the humiliation my own family and Bianca had inflicted on me. Each suspicious transaction I reviewed was a small step toward regaining control of my life. I felt scared, of course, scared of making a mistake, of losing my temper, of ruining everything. But at the same time, I felt a growing strength, a clarity that told me I could do this. For the first time, I wasn't just reacting to pain. I was creating something concrete that could change my life. And that gave me a sense of relief and determination I hadn't felt in years. As I reviewed the information, I also felt anger rising, but in a different way. It was no longer that blind rage that paralyzed me. It was anger that transformed every mistake, every betrayal into fuel for action. I felt shame too, shame for having allowed my family and Bianca to devalue me for so long, but that shame began to blend with self-pride. I was using my skills to defend myself, to show myself that I didn't need their approval to be someone. The sense of control was new and frightening, but also incredibly liberating. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe without the pain completely overwhelming me. I called Adriana, my aunt, without much thought. She had always been critical of the favoritism within the family, and in a way, my voice of support. I needed someone who understood that I wasn't just angry, but trying to do something fair. Talking to her brought me immediate relief. It was as if someone finally saw my pain without judgment. She encouraged me to move forward, to be careful, but not to back down. That conversation was an emotional turning point. For the first time, I felt I wasn't alone, that there was someone outside that cycle of family humiliation who truly cared about what I was going through. It was a huge comfort, and it gave me even more strength to carry on. By mid-afternoon, I began organizing everything so it was clear and comprehensible. Every detail I remembered about Raphael and Bianca's business was being recorded, analyzed, and cross-referenced. The physical and mental exhaustion was intense, but there was a sense of focus that energized me. Each step made me feel more capable, more confident that I was building something that could truly change my life. The anger was still there, but now mixed with hope and determination. I felt like I was finally using my pain for something positive, and that this gave me power over my own story. It was a feeling I hadn't felt in years, perhaps since before I felt betrayed and humiliated by my own family. When night fell, I realized I had spent hours completely focused, without noticing the passage of time. I was tired, exhausted, but with a sense of purpose that could not be ignored. For the first time, I felt that my pain was not just suffering. It was motivation to act concretely, to protect my integrity and seek justice. There was still fear of fear of making mistakes, of exposing too much, of facing family reprisals. But there was also clarity and determination. That day showed me that even amid betrayal and humiliation, it was possible to find strength within myself, to transform pain into action and hope. For the first time, I felt I could rewrite my own story. The feeling of helplessness that had consumed me had become a focus. I sat at the table, reviewing every financial detail Raphael and Bianca had tried to hide. The anger was still there, but now it served as fuel, not something that paralyzed me. I felt fear too, fear of making a mistake, fear that something would go wrong and I would lose all chance of proving the truth. But along with the fear came a quiet confidence. I knew my abilities were real, that my insight could make a difference. For the first time, I felt like my own intelligence and experience were my strongest weapons. It was a strange mix of physical exhaustion, mental tension, and an almost painful clarity about what needed to be done. For hours, I worked almost non-stop. Every suspicious number, every poorly explained transaction, every incomplete document became proof of what my intuition was telling me. Raphael and Bianca were not only personal traitors, but also accomplices in financial irregularities. I felt an intense mix of emotions, anger, shame, fear, but also a growing sense of justice about to be served. It was the first time in a long time that I felt in control of my own life, of my own story. This feeling was both overwhelming and liberating. The pain of betrayal was still there, but now I was transforming it into action, into something concrete that could change everything. Mid-afternoon, Gustavo contacted me again. He had gathered some outside information that could complement my work and help me solidify the evidence. Talking to him brought me immediate relief. It was as if I finally had someone by my side who understood the gravity of the situation and didn't judge me for feeling so much pain. His presence gave me the confidence to move forward, made me realize I didn't have to carry everything alone. For the first time, I felt I had allies, even outside my family, and that gave me the strength to not back down. It was a feeling of hope I hadn't felt in years, mixed with an almost blind determination to do the right thing. By late afternoon, I realized I had gathered enough evidence to take concrete action. The exhaustion was overwhelming, but the sense of inner achievement was even greater. For the first time, I didn't just feel pain or anger. I felt like I was creating something that could change my life, my reputation, and my self-esteem. It was the first time I realized that all the humiliation I'd experienced could be transformed into something positive, that I could use my knowledge and intelligence to protect myself and regain control. The fear still lingered, but now it was accompanied by hope and strength. For the first time, I felt I could take a real step toward overcoming my own problems. As night fell, I sat alone in my apartment reflecting on the day. The mix of emotions was intense: sadness at the betrayal, anger at family favoritism, fear of what was to come, but also an unprecedented sense of purpose and clarity. For the first time, I felt I could transform all the pain into concrete action, that I no longer needed to be a victim of circumstances or the cruelty of others. Each step I took that day was a small personal victory, proof that I still had strength, intelligence, and courage. For the first time, I realized that overcoming adversity isn't about erasing pain, but about using that pain to build something solid and true within myself. I was tired, but more alive than ever, and I finally felt my story could have an outcome I controlled. The next day, I woke with a strange mix of exhaustion and relief. The intense hours of the past few days still weighed on my body, but my mind was clearer than ever. Looking at all the material I'd managed to gather, I felt a quiet strength growing within me. For the first time, I realized I was no longer a victim of the situation, that I had found a way to transform all that pain into something concrete. Every detail I analyzed, every piece of evidence I organized was a step toward my own emotional and professional freedom. The feeling of control was new, almost unbelievable. For the first time, I felt I could face Rafael, Bianca, and even my own family without fear of being crushed again. I spoke with Adriana that day, and once again felt the impact of genuine support. She not only validated my feelings, but also reassured me that I was doing the right thing. This external confirmation, coming from someone who had always been critical of family injustices, made me feel that my action wasn't blind revenge, but rather a form of justice and personal healing. For the first time, I could see that my anger and pain could be transformed into something useful, that I could use my own intelligence to protect my integrity. It was liberating to realize that I no longer needed to submit to the humiliation of others. In the following days, I began contacting authorities and organizing everything legally and safely. Each step I took gave me a sense of clarity and purpose. The anger was still there, but now it was mixed with hope and determination. I realized that overcoming didn't mean forgetting what happened or ceasing to feel pain. It meant using those emotions as fuel to rebuild my life. I no longer needed my mother's or family's approval to feel valid. I was creating my own narrative, and this gave me unprecedented strength. The process wasn't easy, of course. There were times when exhaustion, fear, and anxiety nearly paralyzed me, but with each challenge, I remembered how that initial day, when I felt anger, fear, and clarity all at once, had been the turning point. Remembering that feeling gave me the courage to keep going, to not give up, to prove that I could transform humiliation and betrayal into concrete action and personal victory. For the first time in a long time, I felt that my life could have a just outcome, and that I could still feel proud of myself. Looking back today, I realize that that moment, that day I decided to transform pain into action, was the beginning of my true overcoming. I still carry parts of the pain and disappointment, but I also feel relief and strength. I learned that even when it seems like all is lost, it's possible to find clarity, courage, and purpose within yourself. That pain can be used as strength, and that it's possible to rise again, even when the world around you seems to conspire against you. Today, I know I've turned the page, and that despite everything, I can look back on my life with pride and hope.